This figure is a hoplite, and is one of the most common types of soldiers used in classical and late archaic Greece. The first thing you should notice about this hoplite is the shield on his left arm. It's a round shield, it's called a hoplon. It's a wood base covered with a bronze guard around the outside, and it is far more sturdy than most of the other types of shields used at the time. The next most important thing you'll notice is the 8-foot spear in the right arm. The spear is known as a doru. This is the primary weapon of attack for a hoplite. However, they would often snap during the battle, and so most hoplites carried a short sword called a kyphos, and often a backup dagger as well for when all these weapons were broken or ran out. You can see they're also heavily armoured in other areas. A large bronze shield with face covering, bronze greaves to protect the shin, and a bronze breastpiece as well, although this was swapped into a sort of laminated linen for some of the Persian campaigns. The amount of armouring marked the hoplite out from other contemporary infantry units, which tended to be much more light infantry. This gave the hoplites a huge defensive and offensive advantage against troops from Persia and Thrace. Now, who were the hoplites? The hoplites were obviously Greek men from the late Archaic and early Classical period. However, due to the large amounts of expensive equipment they had to carry, these often had to be the burgeoning Greek middle class. Most states did not have a standing army, with the exception of Sparta, who we could talk about in more depth at other points, but their state was basically designed so they could have a full-time standing army. Thebes also, towards the late classical period, had a small professional army, although most of their units and most of everyone else's would have been volunteers or people from fighting age within their polis. These amateur soldiers would often have little training. However, many Greeks viewed it as their civic responsibility to be prepared to fight for their city. So hoplites, being so equipped with armaments, they had to fight in a very specific way. This way was called the phalanx, and it's due really to their lack of mobility. So if they were to be caught in the open, they could be easily surrounded and killed by lighter armed men. So what they did is they formed a very close-knit formation, usually about 8 men deep, sometimes more. They were packed very closely together. They'd put the spears out the front of this formation, a bit like this. It's called the phalanx, which roughly translates as the fingers, and you can see why all the spears come out of the main formation like a sort of hedgehog with all the spines. This, combined with their armory, gave them great impetus when charging into battle. However, it did make them very vulnerable to flanking maneuvers. However, they were very dangerous in a head-to-head fight, which was actually how the Greeks themselves went to battle with each other. They'd meet each other head on, spear to spear, shot off. Often the first spears would break, and they'd simply be pushing shields against each other and trying to hack away with swords until one of the formations decided to break and flee the field. At this point, they may have used cavalry to help clear up some stragglers. This was about the only use that the Greeks had for cavalry at the time. But predominantly with Greek-on-Greek war, the idea was to push the other army from the field, take their territory, and set up a battle trophy. These are the two famous examples of battle trophies. The one on the left is the Serpentine column, with an artist's impression of what it would have looked like originally in the middle. This was set up after the Battle of Plataea in 479. Sadly, now it's been moved and lives in Istanbul. On the right, we have a reconstruction of the monument after the Battle of Leuctra, in which the Spartans were finally defeated by the Thebans. You can see at the top the shields, which are supposedly the shields of the Spartans. And we could see the sort of religious and ritual element from this sort of these trophies set up. It's more about gaining territory, not about destroying other cities, about gaining territory and becoming the most powerful city in Greece. These trophies can also be seen as some sort of thanks to the gods, who obviously played an integral role in their mind in letting them win the battles. Because the Greek phalanx was used so effectively, and really in Greek-to-Greek warfare meant that few people actually had to die on each side, but against lightly armoured troops they could be devastatingly effective. Because of this, other types of infantry were not particularly used. However, after some association with the Thracians and the Persians war, they began to implement some more light armoured troops. This is a Thracian Peltast, called a Peltast because of the shape of the little shield there. You can see these are much lighter armoured, much less armour. What they are wearing is cloth and linen, woven shield, and however they were far more movable. So they would throw their missiles and encourage, like, or just try and break the line. And because of their light armour, they could move out of the way of the charge and avoid being killed, while still be able to throw their missiles at the enemy. These light infantry were used pretty much like this, just to complement the heavy infantry, until the Macedonian innovations and Philip's conquest of Greece much later on. The Macedonians in particular really pioneered the use of cavalry. Most of Greece is not particularly suited to producing horses, with the exception of Macedonia and Thessaly in the north. They have some more open fields of grassland, meaning they can breed better horses and have better spaces to use them on. Horses obviously require a lot of space to run around and even more space to use effectively in battle. However, when they were used, they could effectively outflank the Greek armies using predominantly phalanxes because of their superior mobility.